Imes family, for all of you who are here as friends, and of course your love and support is obvious, and thank you for that. Just to give you a little idea of the service today and how it will proceed is to begin with, we'll have an opening prayer and then a brief reading of the obituary, and then it will be my privilege to read a biographical sketch that Jim's family members have contributed to, including a number of their own comments and reflections. And then after that, Jim's sister Sharon is going to share some personal reflections. And following that, just to give you a heads up, any others of you that have any of your own memories or reflections that you would like to share would be welcome to do so after Sharon speaks. Whoever else may wish to, just come up and introduce yourself. And I'd like to suggest that we think of this time together as what I would call the challenge of giving thanks in the midst of loss. The challenge and the opportunity to be in touch with a sense of gratitude, to be aware of those things for which you will always be grateful. In terms of Jim's life, your relationships to him, but of course also your relationships to one another that have everything to do with Jim, his life, his wonderful family, and his legacy. The ancient psalmist said, "Where, O God, could I go, where your spirit would not be present? If I should take the wings of the morning and fly to the farthest limits of the sea, you would be there already with your hand outstretched. And if I should sink into the deepest darkness, you would be there as well, and the darkness would become light." One of the scripture passages that Jim had underlined very boldly in his own Bible comes from Matthew 22, where Jesus is asked, "What is the greatest commandment?" And he replied, "You already know it. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. And the second commandment is just like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself." Let us be in prayer. O God, so high above us that we can't comprehend you, and yet so deep within us that we can't escape your presence, we ask for the strength of that presence here with his family and these friends, with others who may not be able to be here in person but are certainly part of this circle of love and support. For your word as it comes to us and is verified by our experience, that indeed you call us to love one another as the means of loving you and fulfilling what you call us to be. We give thanks for Jim's life and for the depth of his faith, his dedication to his family, to his job, to his friends, and the love which every day of his life was made known. We give thanks that you are with us in all things, and ask again for your presence and the light of your Spirit with us in this time together. Amen. James Albert Imes was born on April 11th, 1945 in Placerville and passed away peacefully at home this past October 3rd. He was the son of James Alex Imes and Grace Reed Imes. Jim graduated from El Dorado Union High School in 1963 and attended college and married Rosemary Hoffman in 1967. They were married for 46 years. When they returned to Placerville in 1969, Jim began a job with the El Dorado County Department of Public Works. Eventually was with the Department of Transportation after that was created. A total of 41 years as an El Dorado County employee, and I'm aware that the El Dorado County offices have their flag flying at half-mast in Jim's honor. Jim is survived by his sister Sharon, her husband Bill Gray, his son and daughter-in-law Jason and Bethany Imes, his daughter and son-in-law Belinda and Alonzo Howard, and 3 grandchildren, AJ and Kayla Howard and Sage Imes. He was preceded in death by his parents and by his sisters Sally Emmett and Joyce Imes. And Jim always said, family is everything. Jim was born at home in Placerville. The house is gone now. Its location near Broadway is paved over by the Highway 50 freeway near the McDonald's exit. Anyone who knew Jim's passion for cheeseburgers would find his birthplace fitting. He spent his boyhood in and around the town of El Dorado. Today, we would say Jim and friends were raised free-range children. His family lived on a hill, his grandparents down the driveway, and his Auntie Em on the corner. Jim talked of swimming in the reservoir while fish nibbled at his toes. He and his friends often went hunting after school. One time, the boys, each with a gun, surrounded a pond to shoot a duck. They fired in unison from every direction. Surprisingly, the boys survived to tell the tale. Maybe not so surprisingly, the duck survived also. Jim especially loved his time in Boy Scouts. One time, he said that the boys had a great leader who took them on many outdoor outings almost every weekend. And Jim treasured his Boy Scout handbook and passed it on to his son. When he was 12 years old, Jim went to work in the pear orchards. He felt an exhilarating sense of freedom and independence as he rode his bicycle to and from the orchards. As an older teen, he worked in the pear packing shed, and his pear money bought Levi's and other items for school, and also he used the money to fix up a 1953 Pontiac. Jim attended first and second grades in the historic stone and metal shuttered school in El Dorado. He enjoyed pointing out the building to his children and grandchildren to compare with their schools. While attending Motherlode School in the 8th grade, he was elected president. Like the other members of his family, Jim was smart, curious, and quick-witted. Academics came easily to him. He read voraciously, especially excelling in history and language, both subjects he would continue to study and enjoy throughout his life. Jim graduated from El Dorado Union High School and then afterwards attended Sierra Junior College, and following that Simpson Bible College in San Francisco before deciding that continuing formal education was not for him. He and his sisters grew up in the church, and the family's Christian faith was an essential cornerstone of their household. Those values served him well all the days of his life. His Bible from Genesis to Revelation is marked, underlined, and annotated. It was at church that he met his wife, Rosie. And Rosie commented that for almost 50 years, Jim was the center of my life. When he smiled at me, it felt like sunshine. In 1969, they made their home in El Dorado County, and he started working with the El Dorado County Department of Public Works on Headington Road. Jim enjoyed working in the engineering lab, and he took core samples at first. And for Rosie's birthday gift, he gave her his first perfect dirt core sample. Sometime later, he was certified to use the nuclear density gauge. Life on the construction and paving sites was new and exciting. He didn't even mind teaching himself to do math calculations, and in time became quite proficient in trigonometry. During those early years, his children, Jason and Belinda, were born. Jason's memories include things Dad taught me. You aren't finished with a project until you finish cleaning up. Stick shifts are way more fun to drive than automatics. Keep your space neat and tidy, and whenever possible, matchy-matchy. You can ask Jason about that. 2 words, tri-tip. Memories, kicking the soccer ball together up and down our dusty driveway. Dad taking us fishing in Coloma. Teaching me to drive a stick shift. Teaching me to drive by reciting accident statistics and traffic fatalities at curves. That moment I told him I was going to law school, knowing he's never been a big fan of lawyers. And all the times he told me he was proud of me for going to law school, knowing he's not a big fan of lawyers. His meticulous handwriting and fondness for drafting tools, nice pens, and anything well designed. Belinda's memories include Dad in the backyard at his Weber grill, barbecuing the best hamburgers on weekends. After work, Dad would sit in his favorite brown recliner with our dog Annie on his lap, and we would watch his favorite movies. We watched John Wayne movies and all sorts of history and war movies. He also loved British humor, and we watched a lot of Monty Python and Fawlty Towers episodes together. On nights when Dad was in charge of dinner, we knew we'd be having quesadillas or mac and cheese with hot dogs. It was always a treat because no vegetables were ever involved in those dinners. Dad loved roads. He always loved driving the roads of El Dorado County and talking about them. When Dad was in the car, we heard about striping and paving and signs and lane markings, traffic lights, and of course, dangerous corners and accidents. I was fully prepared for my driver's ed test, thanks to Dad. My dad was like a walking encyclopedia when it came to history. It amazed me how much he could recall at any time on a given subject. Dad was shy, but once you got to know him, you felt his warmth and heard his quick wit. He was a wonderful grandpa. Every weekend we would be up at the house and the kids would be busy outside with Grandpa. They would help rake leaves or work on the burn pile or ride on the tractor or climb trees or carry tools for him. They were his little shadows. I will cherish the time we had together these last 2 years, even as his health diminished, and we spent more time together. The stories and talks we had were a wonderful gift in my life. Alonzo, Belinda's husband, Jim's son-in-law, comments, I remember how he loved to talk about road signs, what had to be posted in certain areas, and why they had to be there. I remember talking with him all the time about cars, all cars, and how he would refer to Nissan as Nissan. I remember how when I would bring him cookies, he would say, "Thank you, I couldn't eat more than 1 or 2, but then somehow the cookies would all disappear. If you had a question about something, he always had an answer. I remember how helpful he was and how incredibly generous he was to his family and others." Bethany, Jason's wife, Jim's daughter-in-law, comments that Jim was happiest with the kids. One Christmas, Jim and Jason decided the grandkids needed remote control cars. I think Jim and Jason had more fun with the cars than the kids. Jim would always take time to play, help the kids with their toys, putting bicycles together on Christmas morning. Who needs instructions? Amazing there were no extra parts. Sometimes when I wasn't feeling 100%, Jim would gladly have a marathon watching episodes of Doctor Who or Firefly or the IT Crowd. After many years working in the engineering division of Public Works, Jim found himself in the maintenance division of the county's new Department of Transportation, and finally retired. When he retired, he was the county's traffic operations superintendent. He retired in 2010. He loved the crews he worked with, and the people at Headington Road Department of Transportation became like family to him. During this same period, his own family was expanding. He now had 3 grandchildren, Belinda and Alonzo's children, AJ and Kayla, and Jason and Bethany's son, Sage. AJ's memories are that Grandpa always had special juices for us in the mini fridge in his room. We could go in and get them whenever we wanted and whenever we visited them. Grandpa showed me how to use the chainsaw. Grandpa let me ride his big iron horse bike, and we built jumps and ramps that I rode over. Kayla remembers the nature and property walks when he would take us around and talk about all the animals and the bear and show us pictures he had snapped with his new camera equipment. Campfires and s'mores, prepping everything inside and going out there, and he'd be in his flannel shirt tending the fire, and he always had stories for us. Tractor rides with AJ, those were always a big deal and the highlight of my memories of Grandpa. Bumping around and him telling us to hold on because we may come unhitched as we went up a hill or took a corner kind of fast. No matter what the occasion, driving a tractor, talking about the bear and the wildlife, in the hospital, during the holidays, or out at dinner, he always had a sense of humor, and I'll always remember his laugh. Sage remembers the smell of wood burning from the fireplace in the front room, and also the bonfires. He says, I remember how he always had a soft, kind voice. It was always mellow, and I never heard him raise it. Grandpa had the greatest and softest hugs I've ever known. It helps to know that Jim's final week was a very good week for him. On Monday, he had lunch and visited with Belinda. He was upbeat and happy and feeling good. He was planning for a camping trip and had already started packing. He had great visits on the phone with Jason and with his sister Sharon. On Friday, he planned to have lunch with his close friend Richard. He always looked forward to that lunch. He was eagerly anticipating Saturday, a retirement party for Tahoe Tom, and another chance to see old friends, all in a very good week. With all of those good things in mind, he took his shower, went to bed, and peacefully slipped away from us. Jim was laid to rest over the weekend with his parents, Jim and Grace, and sister Sally in El Dorado Cemetery. Rest easy, Jim, and God bless.
Thank you all for coming. I hope you'll all come to the reception afterwards at Church of the Foothills. I plan to wear black today. I have black blouse and pants. But then when it came time to get ready, I couldn't do it. I've come to celebrate the life of my favorite brother. Now, for those that may not know, Jimmy was also my only brother. But I've come to celebrate his life. He was a wonderful brother. For our family, we were a family of 6. Mom and Dad, our older sister Sally, who was 8 years older than me. Then I came along. Jimmy was 2 years younger than me. 8 years after Jimmy came Joyce. My parents had 3 sets of kids. Jimmy and I were the lucky ones. We were in the middle. We had each other. We played together. We climbed trees together. We would hold hands walking home from school when we'd get off the bus. Of course, when we were younger, we used to have to run to get down to school. School was a mile away and we walked. There was no bus. Till I was 7th grade and they sent us to Diamond Springs, and Jimmy in 4th grade went to Missouri Flat Road until Mother Lode was built. And then we got to go to Mother Lode and ride the bus. You know, Jimmy was something special. He was the cutest little boy. Blonde hair, blue eyes, quiet, sweet, gentle. Of course, as kids, you don't realize that. You know, you're just kids, you're playing. We're climbing trees, we're playing ball in the field with the neighborhood kids. We would play baseball out in front of Grandma and Grandpa's until, of course, a window got broken and then we were banished to the field. We either played by the Emeralds or the Acunas. If we went over to the Acunas, it was great because then Sonny would take the lawnmower and he'd mow the trail to the bases. Of course, we'd have to keep an eye on the ball because it always got caught in the deep grass. During the winter, when the rains came, there would be a little stream that would come down through Grandpa's place and down through the bottom of ours because we lived on a hill. And there were several hills actually that came like this. We would watch Grandpa pan for gold. We'd jump over the creek at this one place where you could jump over it. When the ground was wet and the grass was tall in the early spring, we'd go out and you pull up the big old wads of grass with the dirt on the end of it, and we had fights with the neighborhoods. Oh, our mothers must have loved us with all the mud on our clothes and feet. But we did. We had fun playing. My earliest memories are when our parents were building the house and the front yard was chaparral and we'd crawl down underneath and make forts. Later on, you know, as that got cleared and the backyard was cleared, Jimmy and I made forts down over the hill, down toward the well, and we had a nice big area of chaparral and a big area inside. We had a marvelous fort down there. Daddy, when he would go out and burn the brush, it was always fun. He would get potatoes and put them down in the coals and say, this is what his daddy did for him. And Jimmy and I then would eat the potatoes with the blackened peeling on them. And they tasted different, but they were good. Daddy taught us how to play rook and steel pile. Who knew he was teaching us math games? But he was. During the early spring, Mom would send Jimmy and I out with his wagon with the sides on it, you know, go out underneath the trees and pick up what she called leaf mold. It was the leaves that had fallen during the fall and winter, and she would use that to fertilize her garden. During the fall, she sent us out with that same wagon with the sides to pick up pine cones because they were great fire starters for the trash burner, which kept us warm in the winter mornings in the kitchen. About the Levi's, I remember the Levi's. Jimmy was so proud of those Levi's he purchased. He didn't want them washed. The cuffs, they weren't folded up. They were a little too long. They were folded under. I remember they were folded under. But when he either outgrew them or they got washed, they came to me. I got leftovers, hand-me-down Levi's. And that was fun. I loved those Levi's. My mother would not buy me Levi's. Girls didn't wear Levi's. So I got my brothers. I'd wear my daddy's old shirts and Jimmy's Levi's. You know, I am so thankful for my brother. I'm so thankful that the last few years we had so many good times. We had a trip to Oregon together. We were here not long when he was in a good place, and we took the drive. Oh yes, the drive. All the back roads up to Georgetown and around and up to Ice House. And absolutely, he knew everything about every road, every sign, why somebody had asked for a sign here, but they weren't going to get it. He knew it all. As teenagers and in high school, was I jealous? Probably. He was so smart. He was brilliant. He could read his texts and understand them. I had to study and work, and it had to go from my eyes to my head to my hand to write it out. He always retained everything. I took the test and forgot it. But he was gentle, very generous, very kind, very loving, and he loved his family. So proud of each and every one of you. You know? And I did. I talked to him. He was with Melinda on Monday. On Tuesday I called and he told me of what a wonderful time he'd had with her and how blessed he felt. Talked about Kayla and the special treats that she would make and send up to him. And about how proud he was of his son. He was happy. He was looking forward to Thanksgiving. We had made plans that everyone was coming to Vegas, where we live, and we were going to have a big family Thanksgiving, and he was looking forward to that. Of course, God had different plans. They weren't our plans, not my plans. You know? I'm going to backtrack just a little bit for when he was in San Francisco. Do you remember the draft? How many remember the draft? Young men had to go down, sign up for the draft. Jimmy went when it was his time to go. However, I think they took his blood pressure probably about 3 times that day, made him lay down, said, you're not going anywhere. Someone, I think, told him, you shouldn't be working, you shouldn't be doing this, you know, go home. And his doctor, Dr. Gene Babcock, wrote a letter saying that from a child he had had heart problems. Who knew? We didn't know. So as a child, there was something wrong. So they didn't take him in the service, which is a blessing in some respects. And we had him for 70 years. We can be so grateful for the 70 years that we had him. You know, talking about his desk at work, he and I were such opposites. I'm the outgoing one, he was the shy, quiet one. I did have, it's gone now, but on my desk I had a sign, you know, a clean, neat desk is a sign of insanity. I can just bet, I would lay money on it, that his desk at work was neat, clean, organized, probably couldn't tell that he was doing anything. You see my desk at work, it's all stacked, you know, well, you have a project here, someone calls, oh, grab that file. You know, we work in chaos in the whole office. But not Jimmy. I don't think he ever worked in chaos. He took care of business. You know, I am looking forward to the day when I will see my brother again. We can thank Mom and Dad for making sure we were raised in a home where we went to Sunday school and church. We had that opportunity to meet Christ as our Savior. And we're promised that we will meet them in the air to forever be with them. No more tears, no more sorrow. We have a great crowd of witnesses. We have a lot of people there. Grandma and Grandpa, Mom and Dad. Our older sister Sally, which we lost in 1998. Our youngest sister Joyce, which we lost in 2009. And now my brother. Lord God, this was not my plan. I don't understand. I have to accept it. I'm left with a big hole in my heart. But I know I will see him again, and I'm looking forward to that eternity. One thing Jimmy had after spending some time at our house, we have cats. Inherited cats and inherited dog. But he decided, you know, he needed a cat. He got Jack the cat. Perfect cat for Jimmy. Jack the cat. He was perfect. And he was a good companion to Jimmy. Mr. Jack the cat, I think, is still with us in some respects. When you get to the reception, something we didn't notice when we picked up the cake last night, you picked it up, went in the car, went in the refrigerator, came down, I put it down on the table there at the church, and I noticed something. There's a misspelling of memory. We have in loving memory of Jim Imes. No, we don't. We have in loving meow memory. It's misspelled. M-E-O, meow. I hope you get a look at that. I hope it gives you a chuckle. Who would have thought? A misspelling. So I'm thinking maybe Jack the cat is still with us, just as Jimmy will always be with us, often in our thoughts, always in our hearts. Thank you so much for coming.
Hi, I'm Richard Brown. Jim had already been working at Public Works for about 10 years when I started. I came from Southern California, retired from General Motors and moved up here. I think that my first memories of Jim, and they didn't come, I was kind of overwhelmed. There was a lot of people there. But I can remember telling my wife one day that I had met two people that were the most laid-back, easygoing people that I'd ever met. And I said one was a guy named Joe Hurley, and another guy was a guy named Jim Imes. Well, after I knew Jim for a couple of years, I told my wife, I said, I know one guy who is the most laid-back, easygoing person I've ever met, and that man is Joe Hurley. Jim, in fact, I'll jump around too. I can remember after I'd known him a few years, when he had gotten to the point where he could trust me, I think, he would come into my office, and there were a lot of changes going on in the department. There had been changes in management, and Jim was old school, and he lived and breathed El Dorado County rules and regulations and treating people honorably. And sometimes things that occurred didn't exactly fit into that after a while. And I started calling him the outlet, because he'd come into my office and he'd sit down and he'd talk about something, and everything was okay, and then I'd say, you okay? And he said, yeah, but, and then he would kind of give me the behind-the-scenes feeling he had on something. But when he sat down in a meeting, you knew what he'd give you would be the honorable and honest things. It was interesting for me because Caltrans is kind of the big god in the sky as far as signs and all that good stuff. And I can remember about the last 15 years, he would tell me that he had always called Caltrans, and there were people there that would tell him. And then I'd notice when I would be in his office, not all day, Tom, we were just occasionally, he'd get a call, and it would be from Caltrans, and he'd give them information. And after a while, I said, did they used to teach you? And he said, yeah, you bet. And I said, well, who's teaching them now? And he said, looked at me, and he got kind of shocked. And he said, well, they call and ask me my opinion and the rules and regulations. I always knew that I could get straight information from Jim. He certainly had his opinions about things, but when it came to his work, his opinions didn't matter unless it was giving information to the folks who were requesting it. Then he would give his personal opinion, but other than that, if it wasn't written down, if it wasn't a law or regulation, then that was exactly the way he was going to do it. He was, well, he was my best friend for the last few years. So.
I'm the other half of him. I'm Linda Brown. And I think the best thing that Jim ever did, other than taking him away from me every Friday, was telling me about his surgeon when he had back surgery. I was getting ready to have my first, and I've had 3 back surgeries. And he gave me the best advice. He told me what doctors not to go to and what doctors that he had found were better. He had not gone to the right doctor, so he researched it and talked with me. So that when all was said and done with the 3 back surgeries, I'm not paralyzed. Praise the Lord. And I told him that many times, how grateful I was. Right now I'm tuning up for a right hip. You know, you just go to hell in a handbasket at my age, you know? It's a matter of what part's going to fall off or not work, or when I wake up in the morning, am I be able to get up? You know, things like that. And Jim, his advice saved me. And it's true. He was a great man, and he has a great family, which is important. Believe me, we have a herd. We have 3 children, 8 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. And it's all about family and friends. And he was both. Thank you.
I'm Keith Harvey. How many of you remember Jim with dark hair? I see a few from high school that do. I'm only a few months different in age from Jim. We went to high school together. He used to call me the city kid because he was from the township of El Dorado and I went to Passville Grammar School. I worked with Jim for, he as you heard, worked 41 years for the department. I worked with Jim 39 of those years. And most of the time in close proximity. Maybe just a wall separating us, or sometimes there was nothing, we were in an open room. I used to tell him that he shouldn't have been hired because he didn't have any experience in what we did. But boy, was I wrong. Jim was an outstanding worker, extremely smart, with ethics and integrity beyond. He used to like to get my goat and call me an alien, a limey, a person with a green card, and pronounce garage or garage funny. Just to get my goat, but he knew that I became a citizen in the 50s. So one time when he was doing this name calling, we were in a large room sitting at desks, and he started off, and I grabbed a drafting beanbag and tossed it at him. And he never let me forget that. And every time we were anywhere with anybody, for the next 45 years, he would tell that story. Of course, he wouldn't say that he was calling me names. He just said I threw this bag out. As everybody's been saying, Jim was smart. He was smart. He was quick at humor. And he was friendly. And he had a strong view on politics. And he wasn't afraid to let me know all of his opinions because he knew that most of the time I was on the opposite side. I would miss our lunches and our talks about family, the world, and everything in between. Goodbye, Jim, my friend. I miss you.
Good afternoon. I'm Tom Celio. Had the pleasure of working with Jim directly for close to 20 years. When I met Jim, he was a chief engineering technician, and he was proud of that, technician. And that's what, in the workplace, Jim was the consummate technician. Everything had its order and its place. It was referred to earlier about the sign of a sick mind or insanity is a is a clean desk. Well, I knew Jim pretty well, and he was not crazy or insane, but his desk was spotless. We used to joke, he'd come into my office and look at the chaos that was there, just about the same amount of paper. I knew where everything was, but no one else could ever find it. Jim had everything in order, all stacked. I'd go in and say, Jim, you did a traffic study 15 years ago, and we're looking at this again. Oh, you can go right over to the file cabinet and pull it out. There was very few people that could do that. As was referred to by Richard, when you work for an agency, you go through lots of changes, regime change, different directors and all those things. And Jim was not a big fan of change. He preferred to stay with the book, the traffic manual. There was the Bible. That was number one, and right next to the Bible was the traffic manual. As time went by, Jim started having issues with the lack of consistency of other agencies. He was rarely critical of Caltrans when I first met him because, hey, they printed the traffic manual. They have reasons for doing everything. Later on, Richard and I joked about this, and we called Jim the closet rebel. He started fighting back a little bit. Not hard, not to anyone's detriment, but he would state his opinion a little more readily, let's put it that way. I thought extremely highly of Jim and relied upon him for anything to do with traffic signing. And by the way, Sam, he hated traffic signals. He just wished we didn't have any. Lots of stop signs, no traffic signals. They were just a pain. When we'd go to lunch, and I had a philosophy of managing by wandering around. I picked that up from one of my previous bosses, and it kind of worked. So we'd go to lunch on a regular basis. When we go to lunch, we didn't talk about work. We talked about life. And one thing that Jim made clear to me, he knew who he was in the kingdom of God. He was a born-again believer. And when I heard about his passing, it hurt. However, right behind that was the grace and peace of God that said, Jim knew his Savior. And so I'd like to leave you with that today. I thought very highly of Jim, miss him, and his integrity, and all that he brought with him. And he wasn't just a co-worker, he was a friend. Thank you.
Thank you to all of you who have spoken, and of course, all of you who are here. And thank you for the privilege of being with you in this very inspiring time for me. It's truly been a joy and inspiration to get to know Jim's family a little bit, and to see the depth of love and devotion, of course, to Jim, but also to each other, and how that legacy is so alive in your family. One thing, nobody ever asks for my 2-hour sermon, so I don't have one, so you can relax. But I would like to share just a couple of comments with you before the video that we'll have in conclusion and celebration of Jim's life. And it's something that we all know but often forget. And that's that tears and laughter are not opposites. They're wrapped up together in what it means to love and to care. And, you know, you mentioned, Jim, looking forward to Thanksgiving. I'm very much aware of my own personal experience, and I know all of you are. You got a holiday coming, and you've got all kinds of memories associated with it, and you may brace yourself and say, this is going to be hard to get through, and you may get through something like that and not feel anything, and you may even wonder, gee, is there something wrong with me? And then, you know, at some point when you're not at all expecting it, you just get hit from behind. Maybe it's a voice, maybe it's just looking out the window, maybe it's a sign on the road, something that, you know, that just triggers a whole wave of emotion that grinds you into the sand, and you know, it's like waves come after that. It may take you a while to get back up. And because it usually happens when you're not braced for it. And I just want to encourage you to be aware that when those waves hit, it's always because there's something really good in that worth holding on to. It doesn't, there's no way we can control the laughter and the tears. You know, we can find ourselves laughing at one moment and sobbing the next, and then it's gone, and who knows. But just keep in mind that all those emotions have to do with things that are really worth holding on to and embracing, and to embrace one another in the midst of that, and to welcome that range of emotions. As you mentioned the scripture from Hebrews of this great crowd of witnesses, it's like there's a cheering section for us and those who have gone on before, who are encouraging us to continue to live the lives we were intended to live. And I just, again, thank you for the inspiration of the love and the dedication that is so evident here. We will have a video now that's a collage of photos in celebration of Jim's life with a musical soundtrack, and it'll take probably about 30 seconds to a minute for the screen to drop on the projector to get its instructions from the computer or whatever else connected there. And then following that, we'll have a closing prayer. And then, of course, after that, you're all invited to reception, gathering together at the Church of the Foothills.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
closing, I would like to share with you a benediction that comes from Isaiah. For as the rain and the snow come down from the heavens, and do not return until they have watered the earth, making it bring forth and sprout, giving seed for sowing and bread for the table, so shall be my purpose in everything I create. Nothing shall return to me without accomplishing the task for which I sent it. And you shall go out in joy and be led back in peace. Before you the mountains and the hills shall burst into song, and the trees of the forest shall clap their hands. In the place of the thorn bush, the cypress shall grow, and instead of the briar, the myrtle shall blossom. And it shall be each day a living memorial, an everlasting sign, never to disappear. Go in peace, and may God's peace be with you. And there are directions printed up in the foyer to the reception. And again, thank you to all of you